This is the Millennials in Multifamily podcast, brought to you by Kronos Investment Partners. We interview industry experts to unlock key information that will help young professionals break into the multifamily world in order to create long-term and short-term wealth. If you enjoyed the show, please head over to iTunes and leave a rating and written review so we can reach more listeners.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Millennials in Multifamily podcast. I'm your host, John Stober, with my co-host, Fritz Ritter, and today our guest is Mark Kenney. Mark started his apartment investing career over 20 years ago as a side hustle, while working 70 to 80-hour work weeks in the corporate world. Since then, he has purchased over 8,000 units, written 2 best-selling books, and founded his coaching platform, Think Multifamily, where in his first year of coaching, he helped others acquire over $380 million in real estate. Mark Kenney, co-founder of Think Multifamily. Thank you so much for joining us today on today's episode of the Millennials and Multifamily podcast. Could you just tell our listeners, how exactly did you get into this complex world of real estate syndication?
Yeah, so thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. I started pretty young. I grew up in Michigan. I'm in Dallas now, but I always kind of grew up wanting to start a business. And at the time, it was kind of be a sporting goods store and things like that when I was young, right? I have a twin brother, and we both went off to school at college, and we were like, man, this is like not great, because we saw everyone else in our family that were getting jobs. Our siblings are older than us. We're the youngest. My aunts and uncles, and they just had mediocre jobs. They were struggling financially. Everyone was. So we're like, there has to be a better way. And we didn't have anyone that was doing real estate in our family or anything like that, but we both were kind of more logical. Or like, everyone needs a place to live, so why don't we buy real estate, which we liked anyways. So we were seniors in college. We started looking at 2 to 4 unit properties. I got a deal under contract when we were 22, and actually, that one my dad talked us out of getting, unfortunately, after it was already under contract, but different story. But we ended up getting one quickly after that, and then just started buying small properties, 2 to 4 units. But both my brother and I were still working full-time jobs. We were both CPAs, and we both did IT consulting after that. After a couple of years, I did start an IT business and continued to buy small properties. And then in 2008, I started my IT business. In 2013, I was working crazy hours. I mean, I tell people 80, 85 hours, but it's probably really about 90 to 100 hours a week consistently. I sleep 3 hours a night. And then after doing that for, pretty much my whole career, my wife we were on a walk, and she's like, yeah, this is not working out. You're never here. You're not available, and thinking about leaving. So I was like, oh, first of all, I had other thoughts, like, okay, like, I make good money, I take care of the kids a lot, which I did, and things like that. So what's the story? But reality is I wasn't spending any time with her. So I'm like, well, I don't really have a lot of spare time, obviously. So if we're going to do something, we need to do it together. And we started looking at other businesses, starting a franchise and all these other things, but they're all going to consume me like they were, was for IT, same thing. So we said, let's start buying larger multifamily. And I invested passively with my retirement funds with a friend. I'm like, seems to make sense. And then we started looking at larger properties ourselves. Syndicating was a little bit unnerving initially at the time, very scared of trying to raise capital. But we got our first deal, 64 units. One a little bit bigger, but it was still a decent first deal. It took us almost a year to get it, because we were frankly busy looking at all these other things to do as well. And from there, we started just looking at a little bit larger properties, and got a few deals pretty quickly in Dallas. And then we've done over 8,000 units since then.
Whoa, that's a lot of units.
Big number.
Yeah, we've had help, for sure. So, if you had to go out and do it on your own, it would definitely be a big challenge. It's hard enough as it is, but reality is, we've gone pretty big, pretty fast. But we had a big why. We were like, for me, it was, I needed to do it to essentially save my marriage.
It's a very good reason.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, how did you manage those 2 to 4 units while you were working these crazy hours?
That's the other thing. So I actually kind of hated it, because my brother and I did self-manage, and we were we were both, well, he didn't travel as much as I did, but I was traveling more than him. I would go, Sunday to Friday out of town and come home on the weekends, and the time in Michigan, shovel snow and collect rent and evict people and things like that. So, and I did a lot of handy work type stuff, and I'm not really very handy, but I did it because contractors wouldn't finish the job. So it really kind of put a little bit of bad taste in my mouth, and that was another reason for wanting to go larger. Was I did not want to self-manage. So we use third-party management companies on all our properties now, and I don't even. People always ask me, well, when are you going to start your own management company? And I'm like, I have no intentions, at least right now, of doing anything related to that.
So do you think starting small and self-managing those properties yourself, though, provided any sort of value or confidence to allow you to go larger? Or do you wish you had just gone with that 64 units straight out of the gate?
Well, I do wish I would have gone bigger for sure. But I would say that it did provide some value. I mean, a lot of guys out there teach, oh, just do something and get started with something because you're taking action. And I agree with that to a certain degree. But we have a group of people, right? When we've done, like last year, we did 4,500 doors. Smallest anyone did was 87 units and things like that. So you don't have to start small. But I learned certain things about, contractors, and we still had to go through the same process you go through with a multifamily. It's not as complicated, but you're going through the same things. You kind of due diligence and, loan. The big difference was our loan was recourse for those small properties, which I didn't like. Our loans now are all non-recourse, which means we don't really have personal liability unless you do something kind of fraudulent and things like that. So I definitely wish I would have started big, but I didn't even know what syndication was back then. It was 93 for starting out. So internet was, not really even available. So it was a good learning process. I think I learned more about what I don't want to do. Like, I don't want to be the one managing, which was very helpful. It's always good to learn things you don't want to do as well. But there's really no reason you can't start big unless you're sitting there saying, I'm not willing to partner with anybody. If you're willing to partner with somebody, then you can go pretty much as big as you want.
Yeah, and that actually leads perfectly into my next question. I think we have a very young audience who, they may not have that smaller experience you had. How are they supposed to buy a large property like an 87 unit?
Yeah.
Raise capital for it if they've never managed anything before? How are they supposed to manage that property efficiently?
Yeah. So if you have, broker relationships and you've never done a deal before, you're not going to get a deal probably. I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible. It's very difficult. So reality is brokers only get paid when they sell a property, and they also have a lot of influence, brokers do, over sellers. So they're going to try to steer, we've sold properties before too, and there's no way I would ever sell to a new buyer. I'm not going to do it because I have no confidence in the ability to close. Even if they're not syndicating, I still have no ability or no confidence in the ability to close because so many things can happen on a deal. So if you're looking like, hey, you're young, I'm in my 20s, what do I do? Well, there are multiple ways to get involved in a deal. We usually about half a dozen ways, more, but half a dozen probably key ways. A couple of them you need money. It's just reality. You can't go sign on a loan if you don't have net worth, liquidity, or experience. If you don't have any of those three, then you're not going to have any value there. You can't really put earnest money down on deals if you don't have any money, right? So that's out. But you can do things like you can meet up with somebody and say, well, I'm a hustler. I'm going to go try to find deals, but I want to partner with you, somebody with more experience, and I want to leverage your track record, your reputation. That's how people in our group get deals, is that we introduce them to brokers, and brokers know our reputation. We have, one brokerage firm in Atlanta area we've done like 13 deals in 2 years with. We have a really good reputation with those guys. Mm-hmm. So that's one way. Hey, I'm newer to it, but I'm a hustler. I'll call brokers. I'll visit properties, do those type of things, but I need to help from you for your track record. A lot of people will say no, they will, but you might find somebody that's willing to do that. Other one with capital raising, you could still know people. If you're hanging around with 20-year-olds, the majority of them probably aren't going to have the money, just generally speaking. Some will, but most won't. But you partner up with somebody else, and have, use your reputation, then you can start talking to other people. Maybe it's your parents' friends, that kind of, angle, people that kind of would potentially have capital. So, find deals. You can learn how to analyze deals, become really good at analyzing deals. That's a valuable skill set, especially if you kind of have a kind of technical background or you like math. And so like those are three ways right there. The other one is asset management. You're probably not going to get many takers on that. If you say, well, hey, I'm going to help asset manage this, but you don't have business experience yet, but you could still help somebody and say, I want to help asset manage this property with you. I'll do kind of more of the grunt work, if you want to say. So those are some ways, but end of the day, if you're looking for a decent sized property, the 87 unit in your example, you're probably going to have to team up with somebody that's done it before. It's just reality.
So for someone who is looking to team up with someone, what is something you would look for in a more experienced operator before deciding to partner with them?
It's a pretty small world. It really is. So you kind of ask around. I would say how many deals they've done. Are they doing it full time? What's their track record? Have they ever had issues on properties? If they say no, then probably go to somebody else. Frankly, it's not reality. The best of the best, frankly, will have issues on properties. It's just reality. Things they've learned from when they started. I could spew off a number of things that I've learned that I wish I would have known and someone would have taught me when I first started. And then location, where are they looking? If I'm in Dallas and someone I talk to is in, Florida, and they say, well, hey, I'm looking at properties in Florida. I want you, Mark, to go look at all the properties before I look at it. I'm like, well, I have to get on a plane every time there's a property to go look at, right? Understand whether they self-manage or not. That's a pretty important key. So those are probably kind of the key things, but it's really, they should be willing to share the good, bad, the ugly. Reality is it's a business. If you do it enough and do enough deals, you're going to run into challenges. It doesn't mean that you can't overcome those challenges, but you're going to run into them. And understanding, you can basically not make mistakes, you personally, because somebody else made those mistakes. And that's what you're looking for.
So Mark, it kind of sounds like these are a lot of questions you could ask an operator when you're trying to become an LP. So you did that first before you started syndicating. What are some things you look at an operator when you're being an LP?
Yeah. So the person I invested with, I knew for probably about 8 years already. So it was a little bit different story. But there are a number of questions. It's going to be more, are they full-time? Do they buy in areas they live? If they don't, do they have someone there, local? A big one, without going into all the details, do they create a new LLC or, a new structure for every single property? So they're not commingling, things like that. Do they self-manage? Do they use a management company? Do they have any affiliated companies that they use? Doesn't mean it's bad, right? But you want to understand that. What's their, like I said, their track record? Have they ever lost money? Have they ever done things like a capital call before? Have they ever been removed as a manager? And if so, why? Ever been, issues with a lender, like foreclosure and things like that? So kind of more some financial aspects of it, and then more some kind of personal. It's unfortunate that people can fool you. And it's unfortunate, but it can happen. And if you're in business long enough, it's probably going to happen, unfortunately. But you get smarter, as you go along, asking the right questions, asking if they had other partners. Hey, can I talk to some of your other partners you had before? I've had other partners before, and one I did a number of deals with in Dallas, and I think he would say very good things about me. I don't think he'd say anything negative, frankly. I don't really do business with him anymore because we have more of a different philosophy and kind of where we're approaching. I've been buying outside of Dallas and things like that. But understanding if they had partnership issues before. I've had one with a guy that was a partner and did some stuff on a deal that he shouldn't do, and got in litigation with him, and that's not fun. But it happened. But he's a good con artist, frankly.
So you mentioned that you had been an LP before you became a general partner. Is that something that helped your track record and build credibility with the brokers?
It can, for sure. If you are a limited partner, this is a true statement. Let's say John, you have a deal, and I come in, I'm a limited partner deal, and it's 150 doors. I'm talking to people, I can say, well, I'm a partner 150 doors, which I am. I'm a limited partner in it. Now, if the broker says, well, hey, Mark, did you syndicate that deal? Are you the lead GP on it? I would say, no, I'm not. But it definitely gives you credibility with brokers and potential investors you're trying to get into deals that you're doing in the future, syndicating for sure.
And so why does that give you credibility with the brokers though? Because how does that help you convince the broker that you have the money and you have the ability to close?
Yeah. Well, it's more if you say I'm a partner, 150 doors, they don't know whether you're a general partner or limited partner. I mean, you don't have to say I'm a limited partner. Again, if they ask you, you need to be truthful for sure, right? So, because some people will say, hey, I'm in 3 deals now, I'm in 500 doors. That gives you credibility. Now, if they say, well, are you going to syndicate this deal? And you say yes, and they're like, well, have you ever syndicated before? No. Then you're at a disadvantage. That's where having somebody else like saying, well, no, I'm not, I've never syndicated before, but I'm partnering with Fritz, and he's done, 5,000 units, raised whatever, $80 million, and we're partnering together. That's where the credibility. But you do get some credibility being passive just by saying you're in real estate for one. You obviously like it, and you are a partner in that deal. But when you get fairly far into a deal, you're going to be asked, potentially lots of times you're asked to fill out a questionnaire, like a buyer questionnaire, and they're going to ask you, how many deals you've done, where's your equity coming from? They're going to ask you all those questions. So you pretty much need somebody that, unless you have a pile of cash that you can just say, I'm putting this cash down and paying it off, you're going to have a hard time. Even then, you're going to have a hard time because they still don't believe you're going to be able to get through all the hurdles to close a deal. But having a partner that says you can rely on will definitely be the best.
And then, so you also had said when you're looking at another sponsor, you're asking them if they self-manage their company or their properties, and if they have any other affiliate companies. For you, is it a good thing if they self-manage their company, or do you prefer third-party management?
I don't want them to self-manage, frankly. That's just because I've been tainted. I mean, I had my partner who was a general partner, was a management company, and it's very, very difficult to have a relationship when you which we removed him as a property manager, unwillingly. He didn't want to leave, and he's still a general partner in the deal. It's a touchy situation. So I don't like it. That's just my personal opinion. Other people could have great experience with it. But I don't like it when they're self-managing, and you do potentially run the risk of funds and things like that, where they could do things they shouldn't be doing. You could argue that the property management company can do the same thing, and I agree with that, a third party. But if they're fairly reputable and they manage thousands of doors, it's probably less likely to happen. But it can happen. I mean, people can steal money from multi-billion-dollar companies. They're going to be able to steal from your property if they want to for some period of time. You'll catch them, but they can get away with it, maybe potentially for a little bit.
Very true. And so with those PM companies, I mean, you hear a lot of investors complaining about third-party management and the control that being vertically integrated provides them. What are some tips and strategies that you can give our listeners so that way they can stay on top of their property management companies?
Yeah, I would say most of them, don't have raving reviews, because there's always stuff, right? It's a very tough job. I mean, it really is. End of the day, it's holding them accountable to things they said they're going to do, like their budget, for example. It's getting regular updates. Every month you should be getting like a profit and loss and a rent roll and balance sheet and things like that, right? But you also want to get weekly updates. Weekly updates should be tracking occupancy, number of leads that came in, rents collected, things like that. So that weekly report, we get one every Monday for our different properties. And then, having a call typically once a week as well to go over the property. The reality is that the people on site are going to make or break the deal. So even if a management company that could be great, they could have someone on site that's not doing that well. Just reality. Things can get out of hand very quickly, but having that weekly accountability, and then doing things like spot visits, right? You can have someone go by and visit the property if you're not local. Just take a look at it and things like that to see what it's looking like. While they don't know you're coming by, you can do secret shopping, have someone go by and try to shop the property and try to rent it and kind of get feedback that way. It's tough, but you can definitely get data points that help you. And you have to give them a chance. So if someone comes in day one and, the first month, like, well, that didn't go as well as I wanted, it can take sometimes longer than I definitely want, because sometimes you go into a property and they start evicting like a bunch of people. And they're like, well, they shouldn't be here because we have stricter guidelines, which could very well be the case. And that's a good thing in some respects. But, you start getting a year, 2 years down the road and they're evicting a bunch of people. It's like, well, now they're your people that you have in, you put them in there, right? So the biggest thing too is not just the general tracking, but if you have projects going on like CapEx projects, you need a spreadsheet with all the items on there, bids, start date, end dates, percent complete, things like that, because that stuff just gets out of hand. We've had it before where it's 80% complete, 80% complete. I mean, going on and on, everything's 80% complete, right? Well, we need the last 20% complete, and they especially if stuff gets done in-house, sometimes it can take even longer. But it's basically have a mechanism to track and then comparing how it's doing over a trend. How are we doing this month versus 3 months ago and things like that? Why is repair and maintenance so high this month versus the previous months? So looking at those trends helps, but it takes you a few months to kind of start getting those trends. Your first 2 months, reality is not really reflective because so many things are changing. You might be hiring people, you might be paying deposits on utilities, you might be, those type of things. So some of those things are one time. So it's really your third month, which, 3 months now means you're about the 15th to 20th of the following months before you get your report. So now you're, 3.5 months in before you, in reality, start having like really good data. First 2 months you have good data, decent data, but third month is really when you get the best data.
Mm-hmm. And so with that staff, like you said, they make or break the deal. Before you decide to bring a management company onto your property, are you doing anything to vet not just the management company, but their regional manager?
Yeah, we will talk to them for sure. What we have found, and this isn't ideal, especially when we, as the property owners, are paying for the staff there. We're basically paying for the payroll. And we'll find out, like, no joke, so-and-so quit, we have a new manager there. Oh, okay. First we're hearing of it. We actually had a manager this week, this is Monday, that left, no notice at all, just left the property. But we had one that left a property and she was gone for 3 weeks before the property manager, the regional, even told us. So I would say, yes, you can, but lots of times, depending on how much the property manager, you're relying on them, I guess, they do a lot of things. And sometimes they'll, like they had, we found out one time, one of our units that was an efficiency, so fairly small, but efficiency, it was decent. It had a washer dryer, things like that. Excuse me, we got a rent roll, and the rent roll I noticed was 1 unit less than normal. And I said, why is this? And they said, oh, well, that's because that unit were made into a shop for the maintenance guys. I'm like, who told you to do that? I mean, who approved that? She said, it's been that way for a few months. Well, first time we saw it was, I don't know how many months it was, frankly. First time we saw it was on the rent roll. So sometimes they make these decisions. So you have to be careful. You really have to kind of keep an eye on them. Not because they're deliberately trying to do things. Most of them are trying to do what they think is right. But you do have to have that monitoring, unfortunately. And it can be more time consuming than you want.
Mm-hmm. You've definitely been through a couple situations that I've never heard of. Have you ever had to switch management teams in the middle of a project? And what did that look like?
We
bringing
did.
on a new management team.
We did. I'd be very reluctant to do it as a general statement because you need to make sure, unless it's just like unethical and things like people are doing things unethical, you need to immediately have them leave, right? There's no question about it. If it's more like, well, hey, it's just not hitting the occupancy, we're at like 88%, we should be 92 by now. that's a tougher decision. We had a situation where one person was reporting one of our properties incorrectly on the rent roll, and we got rid of that management company for all the properties that we have because they frankly didn't take care of it and they didn't own up to it and a lot of other reasons. So the issue with a new management company is now they're taking over, like you said, after somebody else. And everyone always complains, oh my gosh, it's like the contractor comes to your house and complains about the last contractor. He didn't do this right, blah, blah, right? We always hear that, right? But the problem is that you have to give that management company, minimum, 2-3 months to kind of get a handle on things. And, they have their own new rules. And so it was painful. We've done it multiple times. So we've done it 3 times. And one was pretty painless. I mean, it went really, really easy. And actually one of the second ones wasn't bad. It really wasn't. But one was pretty bad because occupancy had gone really low and they were now trying to come up, to bring it back up. And they, some people weren't paying. They were evicting more people. So it got worse. So I would do it reluctantly, but like I said, if it's more things related to like ethical things, integrity, people stealing, reporting things incorrectly, and in this case, I would say that they did it on purpose. They have a really hard time convincing me they didn't report that, that was an accident. But so that's why we got rid of them. So, you can kind of put things in your contract too with your management companies where you give we like it where we have a 30-day out without cause. No, don't like you. Sorry, you're gone. Most management companies don't like that, right? Because they're going to try to put these stipulations in there. You owe them for 2 months, things like that. So try to make sure, one, even your management company agreements, you have an attorney review it. Try to have an out for no reason. They can't, if it says you can fire them for, whatever, gross negligence, blah, blah. Well, I want to fire them maybe because I just don't think they're doing what we asked them to do. I want to be able to do that. So again, make sure someone reviews that contract.
So what are some of the steps that you'd have to take when switching? I mean, the contract gives you the out, but what's that handoff look like to the next company?
Most cases easier than you would think because most reputable management companies, if you're using one that's reputable, they'll make the transition pretty seamless. They really will. And when we went through it, they made it pretty seamless. I mean, you go there, both management companies are there together for 1 to 5 days, which is a little awkward probably for them, right? But it's give us all the books, give us all the leases. It's more of a paper and electronic type thing, and trying to get a rundown of open work orders and things like that. So now the other one we did, and this is no joke, it was kind of a coup, right? We took over, changed the locks. The manager came there, and my partner, who was local, was inside the building with a gun if he needed it. Changed locks and called security. And we hired some security guys and said if they come on site, arrest them. So that one wasn't quite as seamless, obviously. But if you're using bigger companies, they're going to make it pretty easy for you. They really will.
Are you struggling to understand how to underwrite multifamily properties? Hi, I'm John Stober, and I completely understand your problem. I thought underwriting would come naturally to me due to my background in finance and accounting, but I quickly found out that there aren't a lot of resources that cover this subject. I had no idea whether what I was doing was right, wrong, or just original. I don't want you to have to pick up little nuggets here and there like I did. So I wrote an ebook called How to Analyze Big Apartment Buildings and Make Them Feel Small that puts together all the pieces of the puzzle. We're also giving away a deal analyzer with the ebook, and they're both completely free. Don't wait as long as I did to start chasing financial freedom. Go to bit.ly/underwriting ebook and get your free copy today. That is wow.
Definitely
I bet it's a good story
interesting
now.
stories.
Oh, I have a story. I mean, all seriousness, I've, learned a lot of things the hard way, frankly. I mean, it's disappointing. It is when you go through it. But I look back at it now and people that we can potentially help in a group and even like our kids. I mean, I have a number of things that have happened that I wish wouldn't have happened, but will definitely can relay that to other people and hopefully it doesn't happen to them.
So I wanted to go into that first deal you did, the 64 unit. What did that look like, and how did you take it down?
Yeah, so it was listed with a broker. It was one property. It was 32 doors actually that were listed, and about 200 feet from that property was another 32 units. So 32 units was a little bit smaller than I wanted to do, but I was new and I wanted to meet with a broker, one to build a relationship, meet him face to face, plus look at the property and start getting more experience with just property tours and things like that. So I said, yeah, I'll go look at it. And he said, hey, the one, the owner owns this one right next door too, another 32 units. He might be willing to sell. So we ended up putting an offer in it pretty quickly on it. And it was about $1 million raise. And that was a little unnerving. We raised it pretty quickly, all things considered, but it was still, very stressful to do that. Property wise, it was mid 80s construction. Both of them were, one of the 32 unit buildings built as condos, so a little bit even nicer, like double vanities and shower plus full bath and vaulted ceilings, things like that. But it was a little bit dated. So rehab was pretty low. We had like 2,500 a door rehab, so not much. We didn't run into a lot of things during due diligence or anything. We did run into some foundation issues that were like, I think it was maybe like 14,000 or so. Nothing major, especially for Dallas, where we have foundation issues all the time here. So no real surprises. Surprises came up more when we closed in the seller. There were like, I think 5 units that were vacant that were not vacant on the rent roll. And seller was like, oh, I didn't know about those. But we went into them. We saw we closed in September. And I think we had, and there were evictions for August and stuff like that. So we actually found one of the eviction things in the unit. So he knew. So that was kind of we have it now where we can walk units. And we get a credit as well for vacant units. Our contract will have a credit for units that are vacant and not made ready. Was that way. We've gotten, thousands of dollars that way. We have, I mean, this is bizarre, but we had a property bought 568 units, 46% occupied. And this seller's attorney allowed us to leave that verbiage in our contract.
Holy.
I think it was like $370,000.
Whoa.
No joke.
Nice deal. So after you got that first deal done, how did everything start to change?
More confidence for one. Then brokers start, hey, I mean, it wasn't that big deal, but brokers start recognizing it wasn't as saturated as far as with buyers and when we were first doing it, right? As it is now. But most brokers in the town knew the property. So that gave us confidence. And then we started looking at other properties and then got like a 208 unit after that and a 255 unit, pretty quickly after that. And gave us more confidence on the money raising. We went from 1 million raised to 2.4 to 4.2 on the raise.
So right now we're in this COVID-19 environment. I know a lot of people are facing unemployment, out of work. Do you think we're going to start to go back to more of a buyer's market than we have been in the previous years? I'm interested just in what your outlook.
Yeah,
everything.
I'll tell you my perspective. I won't say it with authority like a lot of these guys are, because reality is they have no clue what's going to happen. I mean, if they were so smart, they would have saw this, all these things, right? But I would say this, that as of right now, any person listing a property and you're a buyer, you're going to get it at a discount. There's no one in the right mind is going to list a property today and expect to get what they could have got 6 weeks ago for the property. It's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in the short term, without a doubt, and I personally think should try to take advantage of it. We're actively looking for properties because I think we're getting a discount. Now, people are like, oh, cap rates are going to go. Okay, you have some sort of data points to support your argument that cap rates. So let's say cap rates are going to go up for 2 months. I'm making that number up because you're buying properties for less than you would have 6 weeks ago. Well, reality is the inventory is so small right now. The number of deals are going to close in the next 2 months is a blip. So let's say those handful of deals closing, are they really going to have a big impact on the cap rate? No, probably not. Lending could, right? Lending terms are much more restrictive. Over the last 3 weeks, they've changed, and now I think they're kind of where they're at now. But they were in the 3s for interest rates to 5 to 4 to putting in 6 to 18 months of interest reserves. You're going to prepay your mortgage for up to 18 months when you close your deal.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. So that can have an impact. How long will that last? I don't know. If this was more of a real estate crash, I would probably be more concerned. Reality is it's not. There's an impact to real estate because of what's going on, but we're a lot less impacted than virtually any other industry other than really health. And even a lot of health people right now are very impacted. It's just, like a friend of mine has a number of clinics, and some of them are closed down. Some of them are closed down. He can't even operate right now because it's elective surgeries. So it's tough, but I think that if the country gets opened up again here shortly, which I hope it really does, then I think unemployment checks people are making $60,000 on unemployment, like no joke. Which personally, my opinion, ridiculous. If you don't make that much money to begin with, why you make more money on unemployment is, and I don't want to get started on that, but it's ridiculous. Stimulus checks are coming out. Rents for April as a whole, I think we're much better than people anticipated. I can tell you in March, I was very, very nervous when I saw some things on, MSN where people holding signs, boycotting paying rent. That's not good. And you can't evict them right now. Legally, you can't evict them.
Yeah, courts are closed too.
Yeah, so I think April as a whole was probably better for the average owner than it could have been for sure. May, we'll see. But if it's, April and May of all of this concern and starts picking back up in June again, if it does, I'm not saying it's going to, then this is going to be a blip on the radar, and I think things will go back. It will take longer. Things always fall faster than they come up. Like when you lay off, millions of people, how long does it take you to hire back millions of people? It's a long time. So when people are acting like on Facebook and surprised, oh my gosh, look how many people are unemployed. Well, it's like, have you driven your car around your city yet? Are you surprised that the unemployment rate is so high? I mean, every restaurant other than takeout is closed. Every bar is closed. Every gym is closed. I mean, it's no surprise. So when people are acting surprised, it really just baffles me. It's like, I'm not surprised at all. If it keeps going on extended period of time, that's where I'd be more concerned, frankly. But I don't think it's going to keep going on and on. But I'm not going to necessarily probably project that either, because I actually don't think it should have gone on this long. People can disagree with me all they want on that, but the impact of the shutdown, and I'm sympathetic to people, no doubt. People are dying, and it's horrific. But the impact of the economy, it's not the economy, it's the obesity and domestic abuse and divorce rate and, heart disease, you name it, right? That's going to have bigger impact, in my opinion, than COVID.
Mm-hmm.
It's just my opinion. But
so I do think there will be some sort of paradigm change, though, because of COVID. I think there's going to be a lot more remote work.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, quicker. I mean, we were heading that direction anyways, but I think we're going to stop with this steady uptrend, and it's just going to remote work is going to explode.
Remote work will explode. Yeah. Virtual tours for the renting units right now, virtual, some virtual due diligence. things like that. And there's no question, like you said, it's definitely. And I think some people that are concerned, some people just can't work at home because they don't have the mindset. Right? I mean, there's they can't physically. Hey, I'm not going to survive working at home. But I think some of these office buildings that rent by the room, so you actually have a separate room, not connected to anyone else. So no one's gonna sneeze on you from 6 feet away. Those could end up doing better. I don't know that, but that could end up being something too that's more common. Because some people, if their employers say you can't, we're shutting down our office, you're gonna work remote. Some people don't want to work remote. I love it. I think a lot of people do love it, but some people don't like it.
I love it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, my wife, Tamiel, she likes going places. Like she'll go out like all day to like coffee shops and work, or she kind of wants to get her own office. And I'm the opposite. I'm like, I don't want to at all.
Yeah, I wake up and I'm like at my desk.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Yeah.
But so with that, is that changing what types of markets that you're starting to look at, or are you maybe starting to look at office buildings and repositioning them into a different type of use?
Yeah, we're not really looking at office buildings. We're investors in some ER clinics that are, right now are doing really, really well. Everything going on there. Market's tricky because if you look at what's going on right now versus what would have gone on in, 08 and 09, they're not correlated exactly. And I'll give you an example. We own a lot in Memphis. I think we're like Memphis. Well, we've done really well there. Well, some people would argue that Memphis probably struggled big time right now. I'm not saying there aren't any struggles there, but Memphis has, I think they're number one for logistics in the country.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of logistics going on right now. Things being shipped all over the place, right? Things being shipped to home and stuff like that. So that's, you can't look at that. If you look at other things, even outside of, just as an example, outside of real estate or, things like industries or businesses that did well in like recessions and the depression, things like that, like movie theaters is top on the list. One of the top ones, right? Because people are like, I have to get out, right? Well, and bars, people want to go drink, right? They're depressed. Well, can't go to a movie theater and you can't drink at a bar right now. I mean, you can go to a liquor store. So this is, in my mind, I mean, never seen it before where the country shut down. Market wise, it's tricky because you could say, well, hey, anyone that has medical will be great right now. Well, actually, a lot of the medical people aren't working right now, which is surprising, right? And then you have other people working. One of my friends he's in a group. His wife works and she's working. They got approved to do 90-hour weeks, where that's normally I think above 80 is illegal. Now they have to do 90-hour weeks, which isn't really a good thing. But so I do think there are certain things you could also argue. Well, hey, why don't you go buy all government-assisted properties? Government, they're still paying for tenants. Well, that has some downsides too. So I would say we are definitely looking at a lot of different things. I wouldn't use just the data points of like, hey, COVID-19, am I going to totally transition to do something completely different? No. But, we could be talking a year from now and have another COVID whatever, right? And be in a similar situation. So I think you do have to look at it. A lot of people say universities are great. Well, a lot of the people are not, that are in student housing, they're not there. They're home now. Right. So is that a good thing? And well, no, not for people that, have student housing, because probably a lot of them aren't paying. So I think if you look at the type of industries, it's a little tough right now to figure out. I mean, other than medical, I mean, this isn't to be whatever. You have medical, right? You have alcohol, right? Because people, I mean, no matter what, things like, I mean, look at things like, marijuana, those things always, ammo, guns, those type of things are always going to be there and going to be there more when things like this happen. But, I think we had a couple properties hit harder. We have like 43 properties. We have a couple hit harder than the other ones, but it's more related to it being COVID, not because an industry itself had a problem. You know what I mean? So it's tougher. But we are looking. I mean, trying to look at all our properties we own and try and look at some of the differences. Why is this property doing so well? We have one property that's collected in April, collected more than it collected in March. Bizarre, so we want to look at those things. Why? What tenants are in there? Why? How did that happen? So it's going to take a little bit to get those data points, but we will look at that stuff and figure out, hey, do we want to look at certain things, class A, class B versus class C? People will argue, well, class A actually collections as a whole across the nation did better than B's and C's. Well, it's 1 month. A lot of those guys actually have disposable income that they can pay. What happens if this is 6 or 12 months? Well, a lot of people are going to move from A to B. Mm-hmm. So I don't think looking at 1 month is reflective of like, I should go start buying class A properties because they collected more in April to 2020 than, B's and C's. It's just people look at those data points, they project incorrectly in my mind without having enough information to really make a good decision.
Right. It's having that sample size.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have it.
What I've been wondering though is I think we're definitely going to see more remote work in the future if people and investors are going to start moving away from primary markets and looking even more in the secondary and tertiary markets, because you're probably not going to have to live where you work anymore, at least for lot of white collar jobs.
Right. That's right. Yeah. And you could argue too that 2 and 3 bedrooms are going to be a lot better than 1 bedrooms because people run a home office.
Right.
So even someone single is going to rent a 2-bedroom for an office.
Mm-hmm. Only time will tell.
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, it's a key point because I can make a projection today, and then you can have me on podcast tomorrow. I'll make a different projection, and the next day a different projection, and then I'll go back and say, "Look, I was right." Well, I made 3 different projections, and one of them was right, which is correct. But people need to stop doing that because one, I mean, they can do whatever they want, but they're freaking people out. Some cases, one, a friend of mine, said I don't know where it said March 24th, 80% of the U.S. is going to have COVID. What is that based on? I mean, and then you say, oh, it didn't happen because people are social distancing. Then stop. I mean, I just, it's these projections that have no data points. It really, and people say it's math. It's not math necessarily. There's too many variables.
Right.
I'm not saying you shouldn't use that data to figure things out, just like real estate. You shouldn't use the data to say, well, that was interesting. Class A performed better in April. What about, May, June, July? Well, let's look at that and see before you start automatically making a change or a shift with one single data point.
Mm-hmm. Fake news.
Exactly right.
All right. Well, Mark, this has been awesome. We're running up on time though, so I wanted to get to our section that we lovingly call the Fast Five, which is the same 5 questions that we ask every guest who comes on our show. So if you're ready, we will jump right into that.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So first question, if you had to start all over again and you were in your early 20s, how would you do that?
I would find somebody doing what I'm doing right now and partner up with them, add value to them, and then partner up with them.
Mm-hmm. Well, that goes perfectly into the next question. How do you see young professionals adding the most value to experienced operators in this space?
It's a tough, get really good at something. Like if you come to me and say, well, I have a bunch of time, then what does that mean? I have to train you to get, so pick something that you think you're either already good at or can be good. Everyone's wired a certain way. If you hate numbers, don't say I'm going to be the data analyst guy because I think that's valuable. If you hate numbers, don't do it. Right. But if you're technical, so figure out, the different ways I mentioned. If you can talk to brokers, if you can maybe talk to people about raising capital, you can analyze deals, those type of things. Figure out what you're good at, what you like to do, and get even better at it. And then hone in on that as being valuable. And don't necessarily worry about initially, I need to learn these 50 things to become a good syndicator. No, you don't. People become involved in syndications by doing deal analysis. That's all they do. Nothing else.
Awesome. So what is the biggest mistake you've made in your career and how have you since adjusted your business?
Probably this might sound great, being a little too trusting. And I would say just verifying things more and going things slower now before jumping in. So take things slowly and then have every single thing in writing. Assume everything's going to go horribly wrong. Pray that it doesn't, but assume it's going to go horribly wrong, and make sure it's written in a document that an attorney reviews and puts together, because that's going to cover you in the future. Because if you don't have it in writing, it's much more challenging.
Definitely can see that. What's been your favorite way to incorporate technology and social media into your business?
Technology, we built a couple apps. I mean, I have an IT background, so we built a couple apps, and that's been kind of fun. Social media, my wife Tamiel does most of it for us, frankly, and it's just kind of cool for to be able to put things out there. We're putting a lot more content out there now too. Content out there for people, because sometimes we might think something isn't really, that valuable, but if someone may be brand new, so it's always different levels, right? Brand new, never heard of certain things. Like I was talking to a guy about early access agreement, which you never heard of, and just things like that. So having more content out there for people is great. And then social media just in general, I mean, I used to think Facebook was completely stupid. It was like, oh my gosh, people taking pictures of their food and things like that. But with that said, I do like it because I have 4 sisters, and my 2 brothers really aren't on it. But I get to follow my nieces and nephews, so that's personal. But then you can also put in some business stuff too, because it shouldn't be all business or all personal. I think you need to mix it up.
I was in the same boat with Facebook, and I've seen the light.
Oh boy. And now I'm like, okay, yeah, it's at least some value.
Okay, last question is, what book or books have been most influential to you along your journey?
Kiyosaki's book. I mean, that's kind of the default. And then there's a book that my wife has read fully. I just started it, but she's raving about it. It's the Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham. So I love the title. But I'm actually much more of a researcher. I'll take topics and just research the heck out of them. Books, I mean, I do get frustrated with them because it's like 200 pages and they can sum it up in 15 pages. I don't like that. It just frustrates me. Some people love it, right? They love the story, but I don't. So I usually pick topics and we'll look for a lot of different sources on the same topic and compare things. I do that more than I do sitting down reading a book. And I'm not saying books are bad at all. I'm just saying people need to learn how to do it in a less lengthy way.
Be efficient.
Yeah, I mean, read a book and I have 4 points out of it. I'm like, that's not good.
Yeah, I took a speed reading class, and I just kind of do that stuff when it's like just fluff, and then you get to the real stuff, and you're like, all right, I'll slow down now.
Yeah, that's good.
All right, Mark. Well, thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of the Millennials and Multifamily Podcast. If our listeners wanted to find you online or reach out to you, what would be the best way for them to get in touch and learn more about you?
First, thanks for having me on. I really, really enjoyed it for sure. They can reach out to me with my email. It's Mark, M-A-R-K, at thinkmultifamily.com.
Thank you for listening to the Millennials in Multifamily Podcast, brought to you by Kronos Investment Partners. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a rating and a written review at iTunes so that we can connect with more people. Finally, head on over to kronosinvestmentpartners.com and sign up for our newsletter so you can stay updated on everything we're doing. If you're interested in partnering with us as we find new opportunities, you can also schedule a phone call with us under the Contact Us tab at kronosinvestmentpartners.com.